Lies don't always come wrapped in blatant words. Sometimes they slip through in subtleties we're quick to dismiss. A sudden turn of the head, a story too smooth, or laughter that arrives at the wrong moment. They don't always raise alarms, yet they leave behind a quiet unease. Stoicism doesn't teach us to mistrust everyone. It teaches us to observe with a clear mind. In a world where trust is easily exploited, the ability to perceive falsehood, even when it's masterfully disguised, is a form of self-mastery. For while we cannot govern the actions of others, we can always govern our response. This video is a reminder. Do not ignore the small signs, because sometimes truth doesn't lie in what is said, but in the silence between the words. 1. They change the subject too quickly. In any conversation, a change of topic is common, but there are moments when a sudden shift isn't just a change in content. It's a subtle form of defense. When someone deliberately avoids a specific subject, especially one that is serious, vulnerable, or tied to responsibility, it ceases to be mere conversation. It becomes concealment. The liar rarely meets the truth head-on. They neither deny nor confirm. They evade. And one of the most common evasions is redirecting the conversation. Sometimes it happens in an instant. You ask a simple question and the answer slips away, as if the question was never asked. They steer you in a different direction until you forget what you were seeking in the first place. For example, in a conversation between lovers, when one asks, "Where were you last night?" and the other replies, "You won't believe this. I ran into an old high school friend today." After all these years, on the surface, it may seem like a casual share, but if it follows a serious question and no clear answer is given, it may well be a calculated redirection, burying the original inquiry in a new narrative. This tactic can be executed with finesse. The liar may use emotion, captivating stories, even humor to momentarily distract the other person from what was just asked. They know people are easily swayed by feeling, and they exploit this to avoid confronting truth. Skilled manipulators can even make you feel guilty for asking the question in the first place. The danger of changing the subject isn't in the act itself, it's in the pattern and the context. In ordinary conversations, one might shift topics out of boredom or to share something more engaging. But if every time you try to delve into something meaningful, the other person quickly redirects, it's no longer coincidence, it's a pattern. One hallmark of evasion through redirection is the unease that often accompanies it. You'll sense it in their tone, in the way their eyes shift, or in how they try to pull you into an entirely different species. They may speak faster, add unrelated details, or adopt an overly cheerful tone to mask their inner tension. From a psychological lens, the abrupt change of subject is a strategic response to internal stress. When faced with a challenge, even an indirect one, the brain triggers the fight or flight response. And one of the most common forms of flight is steering the conversation toward safer ground, a place with no pressure, no questions, no truths to face. When this happens enough times, the one being lied to may start to feel confused, conflicted, even doubtful of their own intuition. Am I being too suspicious? Maybe they just don't feel like talking right now. These questions begin to surface, and that's when the lie fulfills its purpose, to make you doubt what you felt was real. In Stoic philosophy, one of the core values is clarity in speech. Thinkers like Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius emphasized that our words should be simple, truthful, and free of pretense. No need for oaths, no need for elaborate explanations, just a clear yes or no. That clarity is the bedrock of mutual respect and inner peace. When someone constantly changes the subject during serious conversations, It reveals more than dishonesty. It signals discomfort with reality itself. They choose the easier path, evasion over explanation, concealment over honesty. And when this unfolds in close relationships, between friends, lovers, colleagues, trust slowly rots like wood eaten from within. In some cases, the liar doesn't even realize what they're doing. Avoidance has become so habitual that it feels like second nature. They shift topics, not to manipulate, but because they've never learned how to face the truth. But whether conscious or not, the result is the same. The truth gets clouded, and the relationship erodes bit by bit. Recognizing this sign takes awareness without judgment. If we react too quickly, confront too directly, or show open suspicion, the liar may withdraw further and shut down the dialogue. Instead, the wise path is to observe, take note, and if needed, revisit the question gently at another time. Truth, when met with patience, has a way of revealing itself. In the end, someone changing the subject doesn't automatically mean they're lying. But if the behavior becomes systematic, especially around significant topics, it's a sign that shouldn't be ignored. The honest have nothing to fear from questions. They may not always have immediate answers, but they're willing to listen, reflect, and engage. The dishonest, they'll make sure you never ask twice. 2. They listen to react, not to understand. In communication, listening seems basic and simple, but in truth, there is a vast difference between listening to respond and listening to understand. That gap can mark the line between a genuine conversation and subtle manipulation. When someone is lying, they often aren't truly listening to what you say. Instead, they wait, not to understand you, but to plan their next move. This behavior is subtle. The listener doesn't interrupt, doesn't appear rude, yet their response is not aligned with your intent. They don't ask clarifying questions, don't pause for thoughtful reflection. They simply wait for you to finish speaking so they can steer the conversation in their favor. Your words become a springboard for their agenda or defense. This isn't true listening, it's a tactic. In relationships marked by dishonesty, this pattern of listening to react is common. The other person always seems ready, not to empathize, but to justify, deflect, or counterattack. When you share something personal, they quickly offer an explanation or shift focus to their own experience. If you question them, they immediately defend themselves instead of considering whether what you said might be valid. A clear sign of those who listen to react is their inability to leave silence after you speak. There is no pause for thought. Their reply comes instantly because it's already rehearsed. In some cases, they might even cut you off with phrases like, "I know what you're going to say. Don't go on. Let me explain." Or, "That's not it." All defensive, none driven by a desire for real understanding. Psychologically, listening to react reflects a lack of inner security. The liar often lives in a state of internal tension, constantly managing information and maintaining an image. They cannot truly open themselves to your words because they fear being exposed. They don't listen to learn, to connect, or to understand. They listen to sustain the role they're performing. In the workplace, this is especially evident. For instance, when an employee questions the transparency of a decision, and the manager instantly replies defensively, "You don't see the big picture," or "We did this for the greater good," without pausing to explore the concern, that's not listening. And when this happens repeatedly, it creates a culture of distrust where words lose their weight. Likewise, in personal relationships, this behavior can make the other feel invisible. When you express emotions, disappointment, hurt, or worry, and the response is something like, "You're overreacting," "I'm exhausted too," "You're not the only one," or "Why is it always my fault?" It's clear that isn't listening. It's self-defense, not connection. Another sign is poor recall of what truly mattered in the conversation. They don't remember what you said, how you felt, or what you cared about. What they do remember is the part that felt threatening or needed rebuttal. They filter what they hear, not to understand, but to build their argument. This not only degrades the quality of dialogue, it erodes trust. In sincere conversation, people feel each other's presence. The speaker feels heard, valued. But with someone who only listens to react, you feel alone, as if you're speaking into a room where someone is present in body, but absent in mind. Practically, this behavior can be spotted by observing the rhythm of the exchange. When someone replies too quickly, rarely seeks clarification, shows no empathy or emotional resonance, that's when you must question the authenticity of the relationship. Body language can also speak volumes. Darting eyes, fidgeting hands, or visible impatience all offer clues. Those who are sincere respond differently. They pause, think before they speak. They ask to ensure they have understood you. They don't try to dominate the dialogue, but accept that they might not yet grasp the full picture. Their listening creates a sense of safety, free of judgment, and that's the foundation of any lasting relationship. When someone isn't truly listening, you'll notice over time. At first, it may feel like a growing disconnection. Then come conversations that end with no change. Your words vanish, as if they were never spoken. And worst of all, you begin to feel that sharing doesn't matter anymore. To listen with understanding requires presence, not just physically, but mentally. The dishonest can't be fully present because they're always holding back part of the truth. And that's why in many cases, dishonesty doesn't begin with a lie. It begins with the refusal to truly listen. 3. They overreact to harmless questions. In everyday conversation, some questions are asked simply to connect or to clarify, like, "Where did you go yesterday? Why were you late?" Or, "Did you finish that task?" These questions carry no accusation or suspicion. They are often conversation starters or a means of maintaining transparency. However, when someone is hiding something, even the most innocent question can provoke an unusually defensive reaction. Instead of answering calmly, they may become tense, irritable, or overtly uncomfortable. They might respond with a sharp tone, cutting words, or even turn the blame around, saying things like, "Why do you always doubt me?" or "Why are you interrogating me again?" The intensity of the reaction, disproportionate to the nature of the question, is one of the clearest signs that something is being concealed. Such a strong reaction is often rooted in a sense of threat. The liar lives in a constant state of vigilance, afraid of being exposed. When a question, whether intentional or incidental, touches on a weak spot in their constructed narrative, their brain immediately interprets it as danger, and the overreaction becomes a defense mechanism. In psychology, this is known as projection. When guilt or inner anxiety leads someone to perceive attack where none exists, they react not because you've done something wrong, but because your question brushes against what they've worked to keep hidden. So they react before they are truly confronted, shielding themselves from the risk of being unbarred. Overreactions usually come with clear traits. First, a sudden shift in demeanor. They may have been cheerful, but once the question is posed, their expression changes, their eyes tighten, their tone turns sharp. Second, the defensiveness lingers. They remain distant or cold afterward, as if you've committed some grave offense. Third, they reverse the accusation. This is a common tactic among liars, shifting focus away from themselves by making others feel guilty. "Are you trying to control me? I don't owe anyone explanations," Statements like these often come with strong emotions, making the questioner hesitate to go further. Another form of overreaction is emotional personalization. They might say, "You clearly don't trust me," or "You really think that little of me," turning a simple inquiry into an attack on the relationship itself. This strategy is designed to make you feel guilty, so you withdraw from asking more. In close relationships, this reaction often wears a more emotional mask. "You don't believe in me anymore, do you?" Or, "That question really hurt me." Once again, a simple question, like, "What time did you get home last night?" is transformed into an emotional crisis. This makes the other person feel uncomfortable and eventually choose silence to avoid confrontation. In the workplace, overreactions to harmless questions can erode a culture of openness. When an employee asks about project progress and the manager snaps back, "I don't need to be micromanaged," or "I've got 100 things to do, not just this," the issue isn't the question itself, but the fear behind it. Perhaps they are behind schedule, or they know they have failed to deliver, but don't want to admit it. One key thing to watch is the mismatch between the simplicity of the question and the emotional weight of the response. If the question is straightforward, but the reply is laced with negativity, lengthy justifications, or emotional redirection, it's likely that something is being hidden beneath the surface. This links to the idea of self-regulation. Honest individuals usually manage their emotions when questioned because they have nothing to hide. They might be surprised, but not panicked. They might not recall details immediately, but they don't lash out. They show a willingness to cooperate. In contrast, the dishonest operate in a constant state of inner strain, which weakens their ability to regulate their reactions, and this is revealed in their overreaction. Yet not every strong reaction is proof of deception. Some people are simply sensitive to being questioned due to past emotional wounds, but the difference lies here. The honest, though sensitive, are still open to revisiting the question when approached gently. The liar, by contrast, will avoid continuation or seek to shut down the topic as quickly as possible. One way to discern the truth is to observe over time. If the intense reaction arises every time a specific subject is mentioned, it's no longer a coincidence. It's a sign of deliberate avoidance. If every question leads to tension, the tension is not coming from the question itself, but from the fear of having to answer truthfully. 4. Their story is too perfect. One of the most overlooked yet crucial signs when evaluating a person's honesty is the smoothness of the story they tell. When someone is hiding the truth, their account is often overly polished. Every detail fits, nothing is out of place, no irregularities or contradictions, and it is this very perfection that becomes suspicious. In reality, people don't recall everything in a clean, sequential order, especially in ordinary, uneventful situations. When recounting something that happened days ago, an honest person may forget small details or hesitate when recalling the order of events. This is entirely natural. Real life isn't a flawless recording. It's laced with uncertainty, minor contradictions, and interruptions from the outside world. By contrast, the liar, especially one who has rehearsed, often delivers a near-perfect narrative. Coherent, clear, rich in detail, and even punctuated with timely emotions. They speak as if they have just lived through it. With flawless memory and unshakable confidence, every word seems deliberate, leaving no room for doubt. And in that, the story begins to feel less like life and more like a script. A perfect story typically lacks pauses. The speaker doesn't stumble, doesn't revise details, doesn't pause to reflect on what happened first. It all flows too cleanly. That fluency is not the mark of a sharp memory. but often the product of rehearsal or premeditation. They're not remembering, they're performing. Another sign is an excess of unnecessary detail. Liars tend to include extraneous information to make their story feel authentic. Instead of simply saying, "I went to the store," they'll add, "I parked in section B3. There was a red SUV next to me, and I saw an old lady picking out lettuce." At first glance, these added elements seem to enhance credibility, but on closer inspection, they are irrelevant to the core and may be used to distract from the original question. In some cases, the overly perfect story is reinforced by perfectly timed emotions. The liar may display anger, sentimentality, or humor exactly when it serves the narrative. These emotional cues often function as tools, not genuine reactions. The consistency between their words and emotions may reduce suspicion, but when it's too aligned, it becomes a red flag. One more point to observe is the lack of internal contradiction. In truthful stories, there are usually moments of uncertainty, where the speaker checks their memory or even corrects themselves. For example, "I think I got there around 8. Wait, maybe later," since it was already dark. Such moments reflect the natural workings of memory. A too perfect story has none of this. Everything flows on a single track, unbroken. In group settings, the polished story can become a tool for manipulating collective belief. When someone offers a flawless account before others, people tend to trust it because it sounds credible. This becomes even more dangerous when the speaker holds authority, status, or strong communication skills. Suspicion is extinguished before it can take root. Conversely, when time passes and the person is asked to recount the story again, sharp observers may detect mechanical repetition. The account is told with almost identical phrasing, no variation, contrary to how memory naturally works, since ordinary recollection tends to shift slightly with each retelling. Word-for-word repetition suggests memorization, not lived experience. In some cases, the perfection of the story is itself a defensive shield. The liar feels the need to fortify against any potential doubt, so they build a story like a fortress without cracks. Every phrase and action is placed like a chess piece, ready to block questions as they arise. This over-preparedness creates a sense of unnatural precision. To spot this kind of lie, listeners must pay attention to the overall feel of the story. If everything runs too smoothly, without stumbles or the texture of lived experience, it may be a constructed tale. Asking peripheral or spontaneous follow-up questions about small details can help test the story's flexibility, because an honest person adapts based on memory, while a liar sticks to a rigid script to avoid errors. In the end, a perfect story is not proof of truth. It may be a sign of deliberate concealment. Human memory is naturally flawed and often messy, so a story without mistakes, doubts, or minor contradictions becomes suspect, not because it's false, but because it's too precise to be real. 5. When the body contradicts the words. When assessing someone's honesty, most people focus solely on what is said, yet the majority of human communication lies in what's unspoken. Eye contact, gestures, facial expressions, posture, and tone. These form the language of the body, and they tend to reveal more truth than words, as they're not easily governed by conscious will. When speech and body language diverge, this mismatch can be one of the clearest signs of deception. A simple example: someone says, "I'm happy to see you," yet their eyes drop, their face remains flat, or their body angles away. Signals that their inner emotion may not align with the spoken message. Even when the words express positivity, the body reveals discomfort, reluctance, or withdrawal. This contradiction doesn't necessarily mean the person is lying, but it is a signal worth noting, especially when it repeats in key moments. One reason body language holds more weight than words is that it often arises unconsciously. A person can plan what to say, rehearse their lines, and choose language to shape perception. But it's far more difficult to simultaneously manage the eyes, facial muscles, posture, hand position, or body orientation. When someone lies, their mind is consumed with maintaining coherence in the story while trying to remain calm. In such moments, the body is often the first to betray the truth. A common cue is the avoidance of eye contact. When asked a direct question, the dishonest may look away, blink excessively, or struggle to maintain natural eye engagement. The eyes are closely tied to the fear of being exposed, so liars often feel uneasy under direct gaze when they aren't speaking the truth. Another cue is the angle of the body turning away from the person they are speaking to. Though their words may express interest or sincerity, if their torso, feet, or shoulders are angled away, especially toward a door or exit, it indicates they want to escape the conversation or feel mentally withdrawn. The human body naturally leans toward what it trusts or cares about. Turning away is a non-verbal sign of psychological retreat. Inconsistent facial expressions are also a key indicator. Someone might say, "I'm totally fine," while their face is tense, lips tight, or eyes uneasy, suggesting their emotion doesn't match their message. Micro-expressions, fleeting emotional signals that flash across the face in a fraction of a second, can also surface and be spotted by a discerning observer. These are instinctive reactions, too fast to mask. Excessive or restrained movement can also indicate conflict. A liar may fidget, shift posture often, touch their face, run fingers through their hair, behaviors linked to anxiety or insecurity. Conversely, some freeze, sitting stiffly, hands folded, face expressionless, because they're trying to control every movement to avoid suspicion. Both extremes suggest discomfort with what's being said. Tone and speaking pace are extensions of body language. A liar may speak more slowly to buy time, or rush unnaturally to speed through the lie. Their voice may tighten, rise, or break. A truthful person typically has a steady, authentic tone that aligns with their emotions. The dishonest often struggle to maintain consistency between feeling and voice, especially under unexpected scrutiny. In professional settings or among strangers, liars may overcompensate with exaggerated gestures to seem trustworthy. They might smile too often, nod repeatedly, or use expressive hands to sell the story, but all of it feels unnatural. These actions can overwhelm the listener with nonverbal noise. When speech and behavior don't align, we sense something's off, even if we can't explain why. Detecting the mismatch between words and body doesn't require special skill, only steady and subtle attention. A dishonest person cannot maintain congruence for long. As the conversation unfolds, small signs begin to leak. An odd glance, a forced smile, or a breath too quick. Each detail builds the whole picture, and over time, the disconnect between their words and their presence becomes unmistakable. Still, not every misalignment means deceit. Someone might appear nervous or uneasy for reasons unrelated to truth, stress, fatigue, or social discomfort. Therefore, judgment should be based on the full pattern of behavior and repeated inconsistencies, not isolated moments. Ultimately, body language is a powerful compass in detecting dishonesty. When words and outward behavior don't align, it's a silent warning. In a world where speech has grown skilled at hiding truth, the body, left to its own nature, often speaks most plainly about what's real. 6. They laugh to avoid the truth. Laughter is one of the most natural and common human responses. It can express joy, friendliness, or simply act as a social reflex to create ease in conversation. Yet in certain cases, laughter no longer reflects genuine positive emotion. It becomes a defense mechanism used to distract, deflect tension, or avoid an unwanted topic. When someone is hiding something, laughing at the wrong time or using laughter instead of a serious reply may be a sign they're trying to evade the truth. A clear example is laughter arising in serious moments. When someone is asked about something important, such as why they missed a meeting or a contradiction in a previous story, and responds with laughter instead of a direct answer, it may be a tactic of misdirection. Rather than provide clarity, they use laughter to shift the emotional tone and draw attention away from the issue. This isn't the laughter of joy. It's a tool to delay or downplay the weight of the question. This type of laughter often lacks any real cause for amusement. It appears as a buffer between question and response, creating a false sense of comfort or scattering focus. For instance, when asked, "Why haven't you submitted the report on time?" the person may laugh and say, "Oh, that again? Haha, I know," and then attempt to dodge a concrete reply. The goal isn't to relieve tension, it's to obscure the seriousness of what's being asked. In psychology, this is known as a defense mechanism. When people feel threatened or uneasy, they may resort to humor or lightness to reduce internal pressure. But when this behavior becomes frequent and habitual, whenever questioned, it stops being an unconscious reflex and becomes a deliberate strategy. The liar uses laughter to control the situation, making it harder for the questioner to press on because the mood has been artificially softened. Another common form is mockery or joking to fight. When put on the spot, instead of answering sincerely, the liar might make fun of the question or turn the topic into a joke. For example, "Oh, you think I'm a secret agent? Ha ha ha. Sounds like a movie." A response like this can make the questioner hesitate, not wanting to be seen as taking things too seriously in a conversation that's been turned comedic. As a result, the liar escapes, at least temporarily, the pressure to give a real answer. This playful tone often comes with an effort to trivialize the matter. The liar might say things like, "It's not a big deal. Come on, don't overthink it." Or, "It's just a misunderstanding. Smile a little." Phrases designed to downplay the issue, pushing the other person to either shift the topic or soften the inquiry. It's a psychological tactic that reduces the perceived weight of the truth. Avoidant laughter also appears as forced or awkward smiles, typical in people who feel uncomfortable but don't want to show it openly. When faced with a question they don't want to answer, the liar might give a weak grin, shrug, and steer the conversation elsewhere without offering anything meaningful. While this response may seem non-confrontational, it is in fact a retreat from dialogue and a refusal to take responsibility. This kind of laughter often does not match the emotional tone of the moment. In serious situations, such as discussions of loss, accountability, or consequence, laughter is not a fitting emotional response. Laughing in such contexts can make others feel disconnected or suspicious. It disrupts sincerity and creates emotional distance. When empathy and seriousness are called for, but a strained laugh is offered instead, it may indicate insincerity. One thing to watch for is a shift in tone, facial expression, or eye movement when laughter arises. If it comes with averted eyes, an uneven smile, or a face lacking true expression, it's likely an attempt to mask discomfort. True laughter is spontaneous, precise, and born from genuine emotion, not forced by circumstance. In long-term relationships, when one person frequently uses laughter to avoid serious conversations, it can lead to emotional detachment. When one tries to communicate openly, and the other always responds with misplaced humor, a gap begins to form. The sincere party may feel ignored, unheard, or even ridiculed. This weakens the bond and the trust at the core of the relationship. Ultimately, it's important to recognize that not every laugh during serious discussion is a sign of deceit. People may laugh out of nervousness, awkwardness, or simply not knowing how to respond in difficult moments. But when laughter appears calculated, recurs in response to important questions, and comes with avoidance of responsibility, it becomes a signal that should not be ignored. In the end, laughter, when misused, can become a tool for hiding the truth rather than answer or confront. The liar uses laughter as a social veil to keep others from getting too close to what's real. Spotting this behavior requires subtle observation and the patience to discern between authentic joy and the kind of smile that seeks only to evade. 7. They respond vaguely, avoiding specifics. In every form of communication, especially in conversations involving transparency and accountability, the level of specificity in one's response carries weight. When someone is asked a question that demands a clear answer, but consistently replies with vague language, evasive phrases, or avoids concrete information, it may signal an effort to conceal something. The ambiguity in their response doesn't just weaken trust, it may be a deliberate strategy to create an information fog, making it harder for others to reach the truth. A classic sign of a vague responses includes using generic phrases like, "It's being handled," "Everything's fine," "That's hard to explain," "I'm looking into it," or "Let's talk about it later." These answers aren't technically incorrect, yet they offer no concrete facts. They are crafted to soothe or delay, not to address the heart of the question. Those who speak truthfully are typically willing to provide detail. If they don't recall exactly, they might say, "I'm not sure, but I think it was around 3 p.m. that day." Honest individuals are not afraid to be specific, and when memory fails, they respond with as much clarity as possible. In contrast, someone hiding something will often avoid sharing information that can be verified or cross-checked, because the more details they provide, the greater the risk of being exposed. Ambiguity can also be masked behind complex or technical language. Instead of giving a direct answer, the dishonest may use long-winded, convoluted phrasing that sounds thoughtful but says little. For instance, this situation involves multiple external variables, and I believe that, viewed in full context, it's a matter that requires more time to fully grasp. Statements like these appear reasonable, but in truth, reveal nothing specific. This is the tactic of replacing substance with form, leaving the listener thinking they have received an answer when they haven't. Another form of evasion is dodging the part of the question that demands specifics and instead offering an unrelated reply. For example, when asked, "Who did you meet at the Tuesday meeting?" someone might answer, "It was a long meeting with lots of different perspectives." This reply is not false, but it fails to address the actual question. It's a subtle misdirection, making the questioner feel they've been answered when, in fact, they haven't. Besides avoiding specifics, the dishonest may delay answering altogether by deferring the conversation. "I'll tell you later. Let me check and get back to you." Or, "Now's not a good time to discuss that." While such responses may be valid occasionally, if they become frequent, especially with important questions, it's likely a tactic to buy time and evade the truth, or rehearse a cleaner version of it. Another behavior to watch for is shifting responsibility to someone else or an external factor. For instance, "I'm not sure that's handled by another department," or "that information's coming from upper management." This diminishes the speaker's sense of ownership and dilutes the focus of the conversation. Often, this is a strategy to deflect accountability, particularly when the speaker is directly involved in the issue at hand. Ambiguity may also manifest through inconsistency. If the same question is asked at two different times and the answers noticeably differ without clear reason, that's a red flag. Truthful people tend to have steady accounts based on memory. Liars, lacking a real reference point, may unconsciously alter their story to suit new circumstances. When ambiguity is intentional, the speaker often carefully manages the level of information shared. They say just enough to make you feel answered, but not enough for you to verify anything. This traps the listener in a gray zone. Not false, yet not fully true. It's a refined form of manipulation, not by lying outright, but by withholding what's essential. The danger of this behavior lies in how easily it goes unnoticed. Most listeners tend to accept what they hear at face value, especially if it sounds plausible. That's why liars who speak vaguely often rely on the listener's passivity to maintain control of the situation. The fewer follow-up questions, the easier it is to preserve the fog they have created. However, asking follow-up questions, requesting clarification, or asking for additional detail is often an effective way to test for honesty. If the responder continues to deflect or becomes increasingly uncomfortable under scrutiny, it may reveal that something important is being concealed. In the end, vagueness isn't merely a lack of clarity. It can be a tool for manipulating perception. In situations where someone seeks to lie or dodge responsibility, vague, circular, or delayed answers serve to keep you uncertain, making it harder for you to form a clear judgment. When these signs become frequent and systematic, it's time to question not just the words spoken, but the motives behind them. We cannot stop others from lying, but we can choose how to respond without losing the peace within ourselves. There were times when I discovered that someone around me was not being honest. At first, emotions surged: anger, disappointment, even the urge to confront. But then I realized, if I let emotion take the lead, I am surrendering my inner state to someone else. Stoic philosophy teaches us to observe without rushing to react. I began to pay closer attention to the subtle signs, their gaze, how they changed the subject, the defensiveness that surfaced under simple questions. Not to become suspicious of everyone, but to guard my own boundaries with clarity. More importantly, I learned to accept the truth that not everyone is worthy of a complete trust. And that doesn't mean we become cold. It means we slow down, become more discerning, because the more clearly we see others, the more deeply we understand ourselves. And that is true freedom. If you found this video helpful, please like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss upcoming content. In a world full of turbulence, truth is not just a weapon. It is the foundation for living a life of steadiness and no regrets. See you in the next video.